Ever get tired of the same old from elected officials who often, at best, promise so much but deliver so little? Or, at worst, who compromise their convictions and turn on their constituents? What can we do other than complain? What we can do is build up healthy families and churches according to God's word as incubators for godly, faithful, wise, competent, and just leaders in the public square. And that is the topic of our discussion today. Welcome back to Everyday Reformation. I'm Brandon Scroggins, pastor of Reformation Baptist Church, and with me is, drumroll please, the one and only Mr. Nick Carter, child of God, ambassador of Christ, husband, father, grandfather, faithful churchman, friend, patriarch, servant, discipler, leader, homesteader, media tech, scientist, financial team member, supervisor, member of our local county Republican Executive Committee, now also a candidate for public office. Nick, have you been to the moon as well?
Not yet. I would probably need to know your Venmo or Cash App so I can send it to you after this podcast, though. Thank you for that.
Nick Carter is a child of God who loves Christ and His Word. He's a faithful man who's married with children and grandchildren. He's a very dedicated churchman. He's led a successful career on multiple fronts, and he cares deeply about the life of our community and direction of our nation, that is. Nick, thank you again for joining us for this important conversation, and one in which we turn the table a bit now to hear about something that's stirring in your own soul.
Yes, it's been a passion for mine for years, but the Lord is, I think, continue to guide and direct us as we get quiet and listen to the Lord, stop trying to chase our own ambitions and allow Him to lead us. This seems to be a path that He has laid out in front of me.
I'm very excited about this episode, and I want to set this up from a biblical worldview, which is what we're about.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm looking forward to just barraging you with a litany of questions.
Oh, I cannot wait.
What do we do with all of these men from Scripture? What do they all have in common? Moses, Joseph, Daniel, David, Solomon, John the Baptist, and the Apostle Paul. Well, among many other things, for one, at the very least, all of these were either civil magistrates or they were engaged in politics in some strong and distinct way. Romans 13 says that the role of the civil magistrate in whatever function that public service office takes is to punish evil and to protect the good. 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 4 is very clear that we are to pray for our civil magistrates. I want to read chapter 24 of one of the most historic confessions of faith in history, the London Baptist Confession, which many churches hold to today. And this confession was taken after the historical, iconic Presbyterian Westminster Confession of Faith. And Nick, it has something very clear and poignant to say about the civil government from the Scriptures. Here's how the confession summarizes it. First and foremost, God, the supreme Lord and King of the whole world, has ordained civil authorities to be under Him and over the people for His own glory and the public good. For this purpose, He has armed them with the power of the sword to defend and encourage those who do good and to punish evildoers. Secondly, Christians may lawfully accept and carry out the duties of public office when called to do so, which brings us here to this conversation. In performing their office, they must especially maintain justice and peace according to the wholesome laws of each kingdom or other political entity. To carry out these duties, they are authorized now under the New Testament to wage war in just and necessary situations. And thirdly and finally, because civil authorities are established by God for the purposes stated, we should submit in the Lord to them in everything lawful that they require. We should submit not only for fear of punishment, but also for the sake of conscience. We ought to make requests and prayers for kings and everyone in authority, so that under their rule we may live a quiet and peaceful life in all godliness and honesty. Nick, why should Christians engage in community, culture, and politics?
That's a really good question, Brandon. Before I really jump into that, I want to thank you for allowing the opportunity to engage us in this discussion today, because it's a topic that many in the church feel like we must stay out of. And we've always been taught the lie of the separation of church and state,
Hmm.
and that's not, for one, it's so not biblical by no means, but it's a conversation that we've discussed throughout a lot of our podcasts, and it's built to this, and it's led me to my decision to run for this position, and continue to see where the Lord leads me, and to really just truly guide my life and be a faithful servant to Him. So back to your question, why should Christians engage in politics? I think it can be very simply stated, and we've talked about this a lot, and you have in your sermons as well, because Christ's authority isn't just limited to the church; it extends into every sphere of life. So, what do I mean by that? We have this three spheres of authority. We talk about the family, the church, and the civil magistrate, and we see that Christ has authority over all of those. Without that authority, there's failure. It's not a partial authority; it's over all,
Hmm.
and it does not allow for any neutral ground to exist in that. It's very clear. It's over all,
Hmm.
and through that. And with that, we see that really and truly, if you look at it in that through that lens, that engagement is not optional. It's part of being obedient servants to Christ, and continue to take dominion, and build His kingdom.
So certainly the church and state have different jurisdictions of
Hmm.
authority and responsibility in different lanes, but that's often used to indicate that there's a separation between God and
God,
the state,
yes.
which is untrue. Nick, what led to your own personal desire to engage in local and statewide politics? Was this just something that you grew up in, a sort of family business that you inherited?
Uh, Not necessarily. I was probably a lot different than a lot of kids. My family was always somewhat involved in politics. We talked about politics. We did not abstain from it completely. So there's always been an interest there, and the discussions as we've raised families. And I think there's a time in a person's life. I would not suggest it for many men who are in the prime of their life of raising children, because it's a huge responsibility to take on. But
Hmm.
Christ has put me in a position now where we are empty nesters in our home, but there wasn't really a category more where um, I could say Christ is Lord over, and it was a development of really truly. I've mentioned this in my some of my speeches I've given. It was through your messages post COVID, or during the time of COVID, of on Wednesday nights, and talking about it really stirred my heart, and really started thinking about not just the responsibility in the home, but what's my responsibility for future generations? What is my responsibility, and how can I do that? Because we see through COVID, we saw many tyrannical leaders who
Hmm.
shut down churches, shut down everything. And
Hmm.
where was the voice of Christian men, of honor, men of courage, who were
Hmm.
going to stand up against that? And when we continue to abstain from politics or getting in that sphere, we're allowed ourselves to be ruled by wicked men,
Hmm.
men who are not of Christ, and it became a growing awareness of a responsibility that God's put on my heart, and that it was our local impact. So at
Hmm.
some point, that conviction that God was putting on me had to turn into action.
Hmm. So this is growing. Then we're having cultural crisis. The cracks are
Hmm.
being revealed in our own communities, our own families and churches, but especially in civil government. But you'd always had that desire. Now there's a moment where you can enter into the arena or you can passively hide away. And so you decide that you were going to press in, that you
Hmm.
were going to serve, that you were going to lead, and you wanted to be engaged. So, what are some specific ways that you begin to engage in the life of our local community and in politics? How did you begin? Not saying that that's a recent thing, because it's not, but
Yeah.
what are some action steps that you begin to take to try to do that?
Well, it started with you had to start small, start local, because we can. It's my first time in politics, and jumping into this arena, so it was not that. was going to jump into a large federal or statewide position, it was looking at where are those places I could begin to have influence, and where are those positions you can have influence. That's at the local level
Mm-hmm.
in local politics. We've been involved in local mayoral elections, but then really more importantly is that we need to still start building that foundation here at home, and it was simple as the local Republican county Republican Party. And that just getting involved there, having conversations with different candidates for office, or even people who are currently in office. So it was, and from there, what it requires is building relationships with those individuals. Because if you're just going as a tender or as someone on the sidelines, you're not ever getting involved. But we need to sit down and talk to those individuals. Our local magistrates are the ones at even state level, and let them know where we stand, and then also just jumping in and stepping into opportunities as they opened up.
Well, we've talked a lot about the principle of
Hmm.
subsidiarity, which indicates that what is most impactful is that which is closest to us.
Hmm.
So that begins with our own families, that continues to our local churches, and then our own local communities. And
Hmm.
this is where the founding fathers of our country were. They were more heavily engaged in the local city, the local
Yeah.
county. And we learned through COVID that it's those local positions that really have a greater impact over our life than we realize, for good or for bad. And so it's important to
Yeah.
know what's going on in those local areas.
And I think it's important to say that that we should look at engagement and look at it and start where you are, not where you wish to be or where you wish you were. Start what those opportunities which God's put in front of you, and start there and allow Him to continue to reveal His plan for you and design. And I would say, honestly, as we're recording this pre-election, and we may not win the election, but however, I've had a lot of valuable experience, and I don't see any reason why the Lord's turning me away from this. Everything's
Mm,
going to be a learning experience through this.
yeah. Well, local really matters, whether it's our mayor, our county commission, our
Hmm.
public service commission, our state legislators, our sheriff, our police, our local judges. All of these
Hmm.
things on a local level matter more than we realize.
Yeah.
So, Nick, what are some things, shifting gears just a little bit, as we survey the landscape, just generally and broadly speaking? Even beyond the local level, what are some things most lacking and what are some things most needed in today's elected officials? And I'm talking about even supposedly conservative ones.
Hmm. So this is a 30-minute podcast. I don't know if we have time to unpack that one completely. No, just turn on the TV, open social media, look anywhere. What are we lacking? Clarity. We're lacking conviction, and even truth, just courage. That even among conservatives, uh, what's I've looked at and seen is that there are a lack of clear principles. What is a conservative? What is a Republican? And this is
Mm,
something I discussed as well. That we have, if you look over the last 50 years, the Republicans or conservatives of today are not the same ones are as they
mhm.
were 50 years ago. Even the Democrats, you go back to the 90s, and there's been a lot of play of Bill Clinton and those as well. They look very like Republicans. So
Mhm.
we've lacked that true conviction of what a Republican is, what's a conservative, but not even those labels. We should be men honoring Christ in those roles, and lay those labels aside. Now, I don't. Going to go on a limb here. Don't think
Mhm.
it's a very far limb to go out to, but find it hard to be a Christian, a follower of Christ, and follow the ways of the Democratic Party or
Mhm.
liberals. Just everything they espouse is in direct conflict with what the
Mhm.
Bible teaches, and we don't have time for that and go through it. But then more importantly, we lack men who are. We talked about this in our last podcast. Who have a fear of conflict and unwilling. We're not saying to engage in conflict for the sake of engaging conflict, but know those battles are which are needed to those hills which are you should die on, which those hills you should not die on. But then, really and truly, what I began looking at, and a lot of many civil magistrates, those who are in politics, are often accused of lining their own pockets and looking at the short term or looking at what's good for them. And what's really has been a conviction for me as I've become a grandfather is that I've have my plans to live the rest of my life in Elmore County. That's where I believe God's
Rooted.
placed us, and we're here to build a kingdom here, my family. And that perspective begin to look at generationally for my kids, my grandkids. How can I make this a better place? Because we definitely do not want this to become a pagan town. We've seen a lot of progressiveness come into this county, but I think God's planted a strong church here in Elmore County, and we need to do everything we can to make this a Christian community and build that. So we need to look at long-term stewardship. So that's what I think a lot of is lacking today as well.
Too often it's been said conservatives, if we're not careful, are only good at conserving the last Democratic victory. And so I like the 3 C's: clarity, conviction, and courage, and all of that sitting on the foundation of Christianity and a Christian worldview and a love for Christ. So, Nick, getting a little bit more personal, pressing in farther, I think a great example in your own life. Help us understand, what office are you now running for? And I'm going to go ahead and tag on a sub-question, which is, what is that?
What is that? That is a question I've had to ask many times. And when I said, start where you are, not where you wish to be, I have been approached through the efforts of volunteering with the statewide Republican Party, just having discussions and looking at the state of our Republican Party is led me to the conviction of running for this position. It's not a public office; it's a position within the Republican Party, and it's called the State Executive Committee of the Alabama Republican Party. So, what is that? This is a question I've answered numerous times. Even those fellow members of the Elmore County Republican Party do not know what that is. It is essentially the legislative body of the Republican Party. What do I mean by that? We have a legislative body that sets the rules, laws, and direction of the state, our state government, and our citizens. That's what this position is. It's the governing body of the Republican Party. Well, it's not a paid position. It's a volunteer position that's elected by my fellow peers in Elmore County. But what I find importance is that we know that we're a two-party system. We're watching the Republican Party falter at times, and quite often, and especially at the federal level, we're seeing that their platform is getting weak. We're supporting transgenderism at times, homosexual marriage, because we want those voters. Hey, I get it, but that's not. We need men that will hold that the Republican Party to a standard. And what is that standard? Where you will be held to a standard of men who follow Christ, or a standard of men who are not. And really and truly, we need to add value back to a candidate calling themselves a Republican, having that R behind their name. And here in the state of Alabama, there's been a lot of discussion in the state legislature, in the House and Senate, that we have Democrats that are running as Republicans, better known as rhinos, and those are not espousing those truths, not espousing the beliefs that I have, and me and you have, and so what we need is solid men to get in there and into these positions that will not just become a participant, because I believe there's 400, I forget exactly how many. There's quite a few representatives, but there's committees within this as well. And my intentions are not just stay as a representative for the county, but to get involved and actually start getting in positions of influence and finding those places where I can have a hand on shaping the direction of the Republican Party. And it's not my selfish ambitions. It's what I feel my convictions are through Christ.
And making sure we're true to our roots.
Yes, and that's the key. And we lose that. I think we have many men who go into politics who have good intentions, but do not have the network to support them. What do I mean by that? And maybe jumping in ahead here, but is that I've personally gone through a lot of trials in my life, and I have come to realize that I need a group of men. We've talked about this in the previous podcast as well, a band of brothers. We have that here at this church. I know if elected, if I start to falter or start to develop views or make bad decisions, I got a group of men here that's going to hold my feet to the fire, which I need that. I need that accountability. I know what's right, but also I need those men who will continue to guide and direct as well and hold me accountable. So I feel comfortable with that network that I have here, as long as I stay obedient to Christ and follow His word, that I feel confident that I can stay. And we do have some really good legislators and politicians in the state who are really, Ernie Yarbrough's a really solid man of God. For just conversations with him, there's others who's running for positions as well. I really enjoy talking to.
So are you suggesting, Nick, that there might be an integrity and accountability problem in politics today?
I don't think we need to suggest. Just open the newspaper if that's still a thing. But yeah.
All right, you've already begun to unpack this more. Any more thoughts other than what you've already shared about why you are running?
That's pretty much the main reason is that, and honestly, this is a entry level position into politics. Is see how assimilate into it, start learning the ropes. I've learned a lot of this already through being in a state government position for the last 11 and 12 years and learning state government. And this is, I think it's just watching everything and now being able to step back a little bit and seeing where God has. At the time, I may not understand why God had me in the position I was in, but as He continues to lead God, we are faithful servants to Him. His plan begins to be revealed to us.
And I think that's exactly what the Bible teaches. In 1 Timothy 3, it says that a pastor ought to be one who rules his own household well. The idea is, if he can't even rule his own house well, why would we trust him to run the church, the people of God? So let him start there, see how he does, and then if we want more of the fruit of that leadership, then let's extend it and broaden it. And so why would we want people serving as civil magistrates in public office and different elected positions if they're not even ruling their own house well, they're ruling themselves well, they're faithful churchmen, and they're already faithful in the little things? That's where someone needs to be tested and proven and trustworthy before they're given more responsibility. So let's think about this office, Nick, the particular place of service that you are running for now. What is your pledge and what is your platform in running for this office, this position?
Good question. It's changed a little bit, but it's still all the same arena. The three guiding principles I'm using is service, integrity, and accountability. And that really, truly is that it's been established through my time in leadership that everything we should do should have integrity or service. So what does that mean? I'm not here to serve my own self-interest. As a representative for Elmore County to the Republican Party, I'm not serve my own self-interest, but the interests of the citizens of Elmore County. And I think that's key. And I should do that with integrity. Through my roles of nearly 20 years now of leadership, I've learned that a lot of people talk about leaders, but honestly and truly, they talk about leaders because they have bad examples. People truly need leaders, need people who are in authority and who truly desire that to be led well, and that requires integrity. What is integrity? Integrity is easy ways is doing the right thing when nobody's looking or nobody's watching you. So that's really the important part of this three-phased guiding principles, then accountability, going back, I've already hit on a little bit, is accountability to not just the citizens of Elmore County, but I'm accountable to my family.
Mhm.
Accountable to the church. I'm accountable, but more importantly, to God and Christ. And that's the ultimate accountability right there, that everything I'm doing is to honor and glorify Him through the position.
Well, I wanted to ask you, why can we trust you to serve faithfully? But what I see in you, what I hear from you, and having known you for so long now on a personal level, I see a competent track record of leading your family, loving your wife and children and grandchildren, your places of service in your career, your local church, your love for Christ, and then your accountability to the
Hmm.
local church under God. And so I believe that that is the makings for faithfulness, as we're faithful in the little things, and
Hmm.
God extends that influence. Now, we've talked about the importance of leaning in locally, but getting a bit more specific and nuanced with this, thinking about this position, this place of service specifically, Nick, why should Christians be aware of down ballot positions of public service? Because we're thinking about the governor or a piece of legislation. So why should we begin to notice and give the time to think about those down ballot places that we will be voting on?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Brandon. I would say that why should we be aware of down ballot positions? Because they're the most have the most immediate impact on your family at the lowest levels of government. And we've talked about, I think, in other election podcasts, that it doesn't matter what's going on in Washington, but we're most affected by what goes on your front porch and
Hmm.
what happens at the local level.
Amen.
And those are, I mean, from the county commissioners to a race that's starting to pick up a lot of steam this year is Public Service Commission. One of our brothers talked about that.
Hmm.
So our local down ballot positions, which usually are not as glamorous, and they are the ones that truly they're the ones who shape our schools. From the Board of Education,
Hmm.
the county education systems, to our taxes.
Hmm.
We just went through in Elmore County. A lot of people
Hmm.
complain about our taxes going up on tags, but then also, more importantly, our community life. What
Hmm.
do I mean by community life? How does that affect? Well, the government can affect the businesses, or not saying we should censor, but affect the direction of businesses and the community that's being brought in here. Are we having story time telling by
Hmm.
transsexuals or cross dressers? Are we
Hmm.
having parades that are celebrating pride? Or
Boys
no?
and girls sports.
Yes. So what are we looking at? What's the direction of the local
Hmm.
community? So those down ballot positions have more effect on your home than what goes on in Washington.
Hmm.
So, and what's really and truly important as well, another consideration, I wish mine was this way, but unfortunately it's not. But at the same time, learning a lot through it, is a lot of times these roles are uncontested,
Hmm.
and those people are uninformed. It's, a lot of times it's just nothing more than a popularity contest or name recognition. But really, those are the races that we need to be paying more attention to. Those are why we need to be building godly homes, godly churches, to put godly men in these or in these positions that God's ordained. So,
We learned through COVID
hmm.
and the lockdowns that one of the most important overlooked positions in your community is your local sheriff,
Yes.
because they have a constitutional authority to step in and
Hmm.
restore order, even when those of higher elected office don't. So, Nick, I hear you
Hmm.
saying about the direction of a community, everything from our jails and our policing
Hmm.
to our power bills and
Yeah.
how much those are, um, our local mayor's office, our local judges, all of these interwoven into the makings of what our everyday life is
Hmm.
directed by. So now, as we begin to broaden out a little bit more and then think more long term, Nick, how can we raise up and support truly good and godly people for public office, people who are both competent and faithful public servants and leaders? How can we raise them up and support them?
I would first say that you don't. A lot of times people will say, "Well, we need to find good, solid leaders." Like, you don't find them; you
Mm-hmm.
build them. So
Mm-hmm.
where are they built? They start in households. They start with men who are willing to take the responsibility of the household and not abdicate the roles which God has given them of raising their family, supporting their wife, leading their family, and through discipleship and that just responsibility is built in there. But from the next spear, the churches, we must have churches that continue to affirm them and not sit in silence. I think what you did, we saw the birth of 1819 News, the
Mm-hmm.
sermons that you, or not, the messages that you gave on Wednesday nights. That's where that's starting to be built. And then we need the men to start engaging in the real world responsibility in the local sphere. And from there, if we don't have strong pipelines, we're not going to get strong leaders. So that's a mindset. If we continue to allow our pipelines to be weak, we will continue to pump out weak leaders.
Nick, our children have been really excited and driven getting up before the sun because they are constructing a chicken coop. They want chickens.
Oh, gracious.
And so we're knee deep into all of this. And we're going to talk to you. They've called
Hmm.
a dear friend and fellow church member. And so they came home not long ago, a couple days ago with my wife, with some eggs and this big old machine.
Oh,
What is that? It's an
incubator.
incubator.
Yep.
What is the incubator for these sorts of
Hmm.
godly and faithful people? What I hear you saying is healthy families and healthy churches.
Yes, I start there.
Final question. What are some ways we can move from complaining to engaging and to do so without compromising? Hmm.
This one could be a podcast within itself. How many times have you opened up social media and looked at somebody complaining, but yet not wanting to take responsibility? So we stop treating the engagement of our politicians as corruption, but we start treating them as the stewards which they are. Do we give them carte blanche to make every decision? No, we need to be engaged. Is that often Christians will stay away from the politics because they think involvement will lead to compromise because politicians are evil, politicians are
Hmm.
wicked. But really and truly, what's important though, I had a really good discussion with several of our commissioners the other night, is that I'm not going to agree with you in every way.
Hmm.
But what we've lost is our way to have civil discourse.
Hmm.
But there's also certain non-negotiables that I'm going to hold truth to, and if you cross those, I'm going to let you know quite well. And I'm
Hmm.
not, but we need to establish those early. So we from that we look at engage in these conversations locally, but and make sure we are concentrating on the topics in those arenas which are important. But really and truly, it's just taking responsibility versus not being a gossiper
Hmm.
and a complainer,
Hmm.
and moving into being a problem solver. And
Hmm.
that's what I share with my commissioners. There's things I do not agree with them that they've done, but I let them know at the end of the day, I'm here. I'm here to help you in a way. If you want to have a conversation with me, be more than happy to be engaged with that and being part of the process.
It's one thing to point out the problems, and certainly we have every right and responsibility, appropriately, depending on what it is, to do
Hmm.
that. We see a track record. John the Baptist did that with Herod and his adulterous
Yeah.
affair. But it's a whole nother thing to sign up to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. And I think we're also called to um, be convicted and share those convictions with these our officials. Let them know where we stand, because you know what, they may have never heard that before,
Hmm.
and that could be our role. From versus if we're constantly just ridiculing and
Hmm.
complaining, and and move to an arena of engaging with them in constructive conversations. You never know. Christ may work through us into their lives as well, and then it's a win-win all the way around.
Well, as we begin to bring this together and land this plane, I want to offer a closing challenge. Get involved. Here's one specific way. Not everyone can run for or be engaged in personally public office, public service. in this particular way. But what we can all do is be a part of raising up those who will be godly and faithful, who one day can, and supporting those who are. So, as your friend and pastor, knowing your life so personally, you have my absolute highest recommendation, and I'm very thankful to play a role in this.
Hmm.
So let's get involved. Let's run. Let's support those in good conscience that we can who do, and let's get engaged and let's pray. Nick, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, it's not for everybody. I've enjoyed it to this point, and me and you had a discussion the night, and with another faithful brother as well. Is that this politics in this arena can get nasty? We've talked about the complaining, and be ready to be ridiculed, and
Mm-hmm.
I've accepted that. But
Thick skin.
yes, and so I've accepted that's going to be part of it at some point if I continue through this long enough. But stay firm in your foundation, firm in your convictions. And it's not just in politics. We need to do that in everyday life and in our homes, our churches, and in our civil square.
Well, there you have it. Everyday Reformation, working out the truths of God's Word in our everyday life. Until next time, may we be the church reformed and always being reformed according to Scripture. Thank you for joining us today.